Alright, well I guess I'll try that again. I just recorded this whole thing to the end, and then went to watch it, and I had the sound off. Isn't that awesome? No, it's not. So, I started my YouTube channel, specifically to actually video log about the trauma that I've been through, like about the worst trauma that I've been through, because I personally find it therapeutic to talk about. I've actually come to find that some people find it traumatic to hear, so by all means stop the video if you find that, but I find it therapeutic to talk about, and it's a little easier to talk to a camera, I guess, in that sense, and feel therapeutic and also not feel like I'm imposing on a person and traumatizing them. So, that's one reason, of course, that I'm doing this, but also, I never got around to it for quite a while at the beginning of my channel, and then I had my court, well, it was supposed to happen, but it got delayed for reasons, and my friend Nat suggested that I video log about my trauma so that I don't have to worry about continually holding on to the memories as much, because I can refer back to the videos instead of recalling them in my own head. Excuse me. And well, considering I intend to do that in the first place, it made sense. I didn't get around to it for environment reasons, and now that I feel able, here I am. I figured I should start off with the first video just giving some context as to how I ended up in that abusive situation, and then future videos can go from there. But to start off, I was born into a situation that was less than ideal, we'll say that, to people who wanted to be parents, or like they thought they wanted to be parents, but they really weren't ready to be parents. They had a lot of their own emotional issues with their parents that had not been sorted out. My mom just sort of ended up getting pregnant with my sister when she was like 19 or something. Had her when she was 20, I think. I think that's how it went. And then when she briefly broke up with my sister's dad, my dad sort of kind of just swooped in there, filled the gap for a little while. Ooh, bad saying there. Anyways, and then I was conceived, but then she got back with my stepfather, so they weren't sure if I was my stepfather's or my father's for 9 months or 8 months or whatever it was. So, you know, the time period they weren't sure. So that's a fun thing to know your entire life, that they didn't know whose you were until you came out. But I came out with black hair, or well, really dark brown hair. And my dad has black hair, so they're like, yep, it's his. Funny. No. So that was the thing. And then my mom also ended up giving me my stepfather's last name instead of giving me my father's last name, and that created like name complexes for me that I'm working on. I just have no real connection with my last name in a lot of senses because of it. That's a long story though. And then despite what seemed like her better intentions, my mom seemed to have gone through her own level of emotional abuse from my grandmother and her parenting methods. I didn't know this until recently. I mean, I always thought my grandma was a decent grandma, and she always seemed like she was a better mom to my mom than my mom was to me, because she cooked and cleaned and you know, took care of the house and tended to their school and like did mommy things. But apparently she was rather emotionally abusive, and like there was difficulties in the house at the same time. But my mom, she wasn't very into cleaning. She didn't cook as much as some mothers would. Like, I did a lot of breakfasts and lunches on my own, and there was definitely fend for yourself nights from a rather young age. And I don't remember her. I mean, I'm told there's lots of memories of her partaking with us and things, and there's a lot of things she did do with us, and at the same time there's a lot more she could have done. I mean, this is all a scale of things, but I feel I have reading problems because she didn't read to me enough, for example. I suppose that's a bit of a trivial thing compared to some things, but she was also just generally so wrapped up in her own emotional issues that she made a lot of decisions that made me feel burdensome to her. And so I didn't feel like I could get the attention I needed from her. And from a very, very young age, rather, like I was like 5 months old or something, an unfortunate incident happened. It was a one-time thing, but my dad experienced some rather intense emotional dysregulation while taking care of me, and unfortunately slapped me around a little bit. This was the only time that he ever laid a hand on me, but he never forgave himself. To this day, he still doesn't. You know, maybe some of you feel like that's justified, because, you know, how could you ever do that? But at the same time, he didn't mean to, and emotional dysregulation, like I said, and he still hasn't forgiven himself. And, well, what that led to is an emotional 10-foot pole between him and I for my entire fucking life. So you might think it's good that he never forgave himself, but it ruined my connection with him, so I disagree. But anyway, we're trying to rebuild that now, but that was then. That's what happened. Fuck out. Who will get that reference? Probably like no one. So I had a very distant relationship with my father emotionally, and my mother just had an inability to be there emotionally. We were rather poor on the grand scheme of things. My mom had like grade 10 education. So, and I think my father finished grade 12, but he never really did anything beyond that. So they weren't really super great jobs able to get, and I remember spending most of my growing up in the town housing, which was like low-income housing and such, and being like the dirty kid on the street that everyone made fun of all the time because my mom wasn't very clean, so that was fun. I did have like more confidence than some to be able to stand up for myself and sometimes tell them to fuck off or, you know, have a good snooty comeback. But yeah, I definitely got the bullying plenty for both my financial situation and my family situation, and just not being a good emotionally and socially regulated person from young on. So that was a lot of fun. And then because of not feeling like I could get the emotional support that I needed, I ended up getting attention from someone who ended up pedophiling me, if that's the way to say it, for diddling. That's the word, diddling. From like 5 or 6 till 10 or 11. I was young, like so young that I don't really remember when it started, but through talking about like when he moved into the house, I sort of figured out it was like 5 or 6. And it was just, I kind of learned that this person cares about me. They want to pay attention to me unlike other people. When I go for attention, they will give it to me. And well, they also want this type of attention, this type of thing from me, and I guess, well, that is a price that I will pay in order to get attention. So that happened for several years, and you know, continued through the bullying and la da da. Then I ended up moving out to live with my aunt in the city, and I went from being a complete loner to sort of being somewhat popular, and it was weird. And I was just like, oh, so the way people perceive you is dependent on how you get treated. That's interesting. I don't know. It was kind of my first experience of it where I wasn't a loner. Like, it wasn't me who made me a loner. It was everyone else who made me a loner because they didn't like me. When I found people who liked me, I was no longer a loner. Yeah. So then I went back to living in the town that I'd come from, and I kind of just got mean from experiencing all of the rejection and all the things from my earlier years, and I didn't want to put up with that anymore. So I kind of became a rebel, a punk or whatever, listening to hard rock and doing a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing, messing around with boys and stealing, and yeah, not very proud of that stuff. Ran away once too, forgot about that. Just silly, rebellious stuff that kids do when they're really messed up in the head and not getting any guidance. And looking for attention above all. And then the whole family moved back to the city, and so that was kind of like my first full experience living in the city with parents that, you know, had absolutely no guidance or regulation. They just kind of let us do whatever we wanted. There was a certain level of, like, you know, don't be disrespectful to mom, or don't do certain things that she finds wrong, but generally do whatever you want and just come home at night. Go hang out with whatever you want, be wherever you want, be responsible, but do what you want. As a 13-year-old, at the time, that meant to kind of go crazy and do a lot of stuff that you shouldn't do. It was fun, but I should have done it. So, with that, I was kind of like all over the place. But there was one thing that she said to me, actually back in grade 3 or 4, that was like a wake-up call that really structured how I lived a lot of things in the future. And so, you know, if there's one thing I could ever thank her for, it was this thing, where she was in the kitchen cooking, and she said, honey, don't grow up like me. Finish school. And I was just like, brick wall, wake-up call. Yeah. It was kind of overwhelming, and it just kind of made me go, oh, so I'm poor, and like we're living in this terrible poverty situation because you didn't finish school? Well, alright then. I'm finishing school. I am going all the way through school and doing so much better in school so that I can not be in this situation, and I can not be putting my children through this hell. I'm still poor, but anyways, I don't have kids yet. Not done school either. I don't even know if I ever will. Another story. But, now I lost where I was. Right, so she told me to finish school, and this had me, like, start working harder on school. And, so even though I was rebelling and stuff, and, like, acting out and doing a lot of shit I shouldn't be doing, I was also still working a lot on school and, like, trying to keep my grades up. And grade 8, I actually had rather good grades, despite it being, like, one of my most rebellious, darkest years as well. But in moving to the city, my stepfather ran into who became my adoptive father. He was someone that he used to know. No, I just thought of that song, but anyways. And got back in touch with, and just sort of, like, started borrowing money from him and buying drugs from him, because that's what my parents did. They, like, reached out to whoever they could meet to be a new buddy to borrow money from and get drugs from or whatever. So, mostly just pot. I didn't mean to make that sound bad. Just pot, but still. Anyways, so that's what they started off as, like, a relationship. And then my stepdad went to him and was like, will you take my daughter, referring to my sister, actually, and, like, hire her, give her a job, and straighten her out, and make her not as dysregulated and all over the place, and give her some structure in her life. And it was just like, sure, yeah, because he was a capable person. He owned a shop, a mechanic shop, and all he ever really thought that he wanted to do with his life at the time was just help someone, help people, because despite his capabilities and resources, he didn't really do much. He never had any kids. He didn't have anything to speak of to show for himself, so he wanted to help, and was like, yeah. And he gave her a job, and she did it, but, well, I love my sister to death now. Like, she's very smart and awesome, and I'm very proud to call her my sister. But back then, she was not the best worker. And so, he ended up firing her in the end. But before that happened, he actually asked her, do you want to clean my place? Just for some extra money. And she was just like, no. Thanks, no, that's gross. I don't know why, but that was her response. And then they came to me and were like, well, do you want to do it? But the way my mom presented it to me was, this is the person that we just borrowed money from to get your grade 8 dress. Because I was graduating grade 8 that year. So we kind of owe them money for your dress. Do you want to go help pay off that debt? And I was very easily guilt tripped. So I was just like, yes, I have to. So I did. And he, like, took money off their debt, although apparently I learned it was a drug debt, not my dress debt. But anyways, according to him, I don't know. Different stories. according to them, it was probably different than just me. So he paid off some of the debt and gave me a bit of money too, and that was nice. And then I just like started doing this regularly, and that's sort of how I got to know him, or sort of started to have him as a part of my life, was mostly just cleaning his place and him being nice in that regard, and started recognizing that I was still really concentrating on my school despite going through such a hard time with my family and my emotions and everything. And he offered to let me live with him and finish school, and he would like help me get through school and basically just be like a solid parent figure that I needed to get to university and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Apparently my mom didn't know of it this way. It was explained to her like, oh, well, we'll just like borrow his address because it's closer to the school and they'll let me go to that school that way. Whereas I'd have to go to another school in a different district otherwise. So she didn't like think I was moving in with him. I don't know. This is what she told me recently. But as far as I understood, she knew I was moving in with him. So I did. And that's just like things sort of progressed from there. So yeah, that is my background of like what I was working with when I got into the abusive situation. That's sort of how I got into living with him and having him as my adoptive father. So he didn't like fully adopt me. I kind of was like given to him by my mother. But anyway, that's how it started. And I guess I will get into like the real nitty-gritties of how the abuse began in the next video. So I will see you later, I guess.